A warm welcome, dear brethren and dear friends, to today's video. I wish you a blessed Sabbath and am happy that you are here with me at the White Cloud Farm. I have titled this video, this message, as follows: Seek the heart of Jesus. And over the course of this video, you will surely find out why this title was chosen. It is meant to be a message of hope for the times ahead. And this message was given to Brother John on December 21st, 2024. He shared it with us the next day. And since then, we have been diligently working and hurrying to record this video to have it ready for you in time. I am beginning this recording on December 24th. And I mention this because some of the events I will speak about today are still in the future for us, but may already be in the past by the time this video is published. And so we don't know exactly how some events will unfold in the meantime. We are in December, and this December has been an important month. You surely remember Brother John's video series, especially the latest videos. They dealt with the loosening of the four winds, which we expect in December. They addressed the hour of the harvest that was to come. They also spoke of a message of blessing given to Philadelphia, which extended into December. The silence in heaven is also expected during this time in December. You know these dates from Brother John's videos. And so we are, of course, eager to see, particularly from December 15 onward, how all this develops and manifests on earth. I am convinced that our followers, those who truly watch our videos, are asking themselves the same questions and trying to determine how all this has manifested or will manifest. The texts we are working with here are all highly symbolic, and it is therefore always challenging to discern how the events will occur on earth. Finding them in the firmament is one thing, but it is an easier task. Once the texts have been identified in the heavens and the time frame is known, it is up to us to see how these verses are fulfilled on earth. And that is usually not so easy. Now, do we already know everything? No, clearly not. We know much, but not everything yet. Why? Because the mystery of God, as mentioned in Revelation, will only be fully understood when the angel prepares to sound the seventh trumpet. And that will not happen until February, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we have discovered a comet, G3, as you know from Brother Ray's last video. This comet, G3, has already helped us better and more accurately understand the verses in Revelation 19, which speak of the rider on the white horse, as well as verses in Revelation 20 and 21, which even occur after the millennium. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch Brother Ray's last video titled The Heart of Time. You surely remember that this heart begins to form on April 8th, 2024. On this date, not only did a special solar eclipse occur, but together with a past solar eclipse, it formed this super famous X over America. That is very significant. Additionally, this timeline of the 1335 days from Daniel 12:12 ended on April 8th. And thus, we can already see that on this day, this heart sign also began to form. So we can assume that we can also learn something from G3, the comet forming this heart sign, regarding the two witnesses. And that will be our main topic in today's service or lecture. Remember also that on this April 8th, there was a blessing that included, "I come quickly." This blessing was given to Philadelphia. And remember, this quickly stands for 251 days. And if you add these to April 8, you arrive once again at December 15. So far, we have mainly focused on two comets. These were K2 and E3. And both have formed and continue to form the sign of the Son of Man. And right now, the last part of the mu is being formed. But now we have been able to discover G3 to gain additional information and to understand the texts in Revelation even better and more precisely. So today we will particularly look at the time period of the two witnesses, because we still have a few open questions there. But before we do that, let's first see if our memory still retains what Brother John last taught us. It happens to us too that sometimes we remain stuck in the old understanding, even though a better understanding has already been taught. So, who are the two witnesses? In this video, the loosening of the four winds, Brother John explained all that to us. If you haven't seen it yet, please make sure to watch it. Let's quickly look at Revelation 11:4. There it says, "These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the Lord of the earth." And Brother John connected this verse with the four corners of the earth. I took this image directly from Brother John's video. You might remember that the earth reaches four extreme points during its journey around the sun over the course of a year. We have here the spring equinox. Then comes the summer solstice. Here is the autumn equinox. And here is the winter solstice. These are the four corners of the earth. And if you look here, the winter solstice is on December 21 or 22. And Now you can already begin to think about why this message was given on December 21, the day of the winter solstice, which relates to the two olive trees and the two candlesticks in the heavens. Is there a special call to the witnesses that we are waiting for? And don't we want to see a special ascension of the two witnesses? Where are these 4 points in the heavens located? That was the next question. And this image gives us part of the answer. Here we see the solstice in Sagittarius, and here we see the solstice in Orion, where the club intersects with the ecliptic. These 2 points are located almost precisely where the galactic equator and the ecliptic cross. These are the 2 trees, or the 2 trunks of the olive tree. And as you know, Brother John has already explained that in heaven, the water of life flows, and on the bank, on either side of the river, stands the trunk of the tree of life. That is what we see here. The club on one side, which also represents the fig tree, is one piece of wood, one trunk, and on the other side here is the cross. Jesus was nailed to the wood, to the cross, and we see this once more in this image. Everyone who follows our movement, our ministry, knows that a fundamental cornerstone of our movement has been the discovery of the true crucifixion date of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is even the center of our studies, the foundation. May 25th, AD 31. This event is precisely here at the intersection of the ecliptic and the galactic equator, here in Sagittarius. And at that time, in AD 31, the full moon stood directly above the cross. And on the other side, once again, here is the wood in the hand of Jesus, the fig tree, the tree of life. Here we have the 2 trunks. I hope you can recall this. But now we also need the 2 candlesticks. And we have found one candlestick here at the equinox, here in Virgo. And the second candlestick is here at the equinox, at the reclining fish in Pisces. You can see this here in the Mazzaroth. Virgo here is nourished by the olive tree in Orion, while the reclining fish here is nourished by the cross of Jesus. The earthly representatives, or earthly witnesses, of the heavenly witnesses are the living church of Philadelphia, symbolized by Virgo, and the church of Smyrna, symbolized by the reclining fish. Both churches are without reproach. These are the true witnesses in the heavens, in the Mazzaroth. 2 trees, 2 olive trees, and 2 candlesticks. And of course, as you can recall, Brother John also explained that these 4 elements are also represented in the sign of the Son of Man. Here we have the horologium, which essentially represents the cross of Jesus. And here we have Orion, who is the high priest in heaven, the living high priest. These are the two olive trees depicted in the sign of the Son of Man. And here we also have the two candlesticks, namely the dove, Columba, representing the Church of Philadelphia. And here in Phaeton, the man in the river, representing the Church of Smyrna. And if you will, the Church of Philadelphia, which we may be, forms the living witnesses at the end of the time of the investigative judgment. And one interpretation for the Church of Smyrna in this context is that the dead fish, this Phaeton, can represent the dead pioneers from the early days of the investigative judgment. You must not forget, as it says in Revelation 14, that their works follow them, the works of the pioneers. Brother John also explained this. And today, we are privileged to continue and bring their work to completion. Please watch the video, The Loosening of the Four Winds, to gain even more detailed insights. I just wanted to provide a refresher so that we can continue from there in today's study. It is important to know which witnesses we are discussing and where they can be found on the Maseroth. Where we need to look, that is the point. After this review, let's take another look at the witnesses in Daniel 12. Let us read the passage. Here we have Daniel 12. You already know it, but I'll explain it again. The verse that connects the heart sign to Daniel is verse 12. This was the blessing to Philadelphia. Blessed is he who waits and reaches the 1335 days. This refers to the date April 8th, 2024. And this verse is chiastically associated with the second verse. The penultimate verse is linked to the second verse. And this is where it gets interesting. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. This already points to a certain kind of resurrection. In our terminology, we call this resurrection the special resurrection. This is not the first general resurrection, which occurs when Jesus comes and takes all the saved of the earth to himself. So here we have a special resurrection. Many shall awake, but not all. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So in this special resurrection, both good and evil people are raised. This corresponds to Revelation 1:7, where it is explained that even those who pierced Jesus will see him when he comes on the clouds. Logically, they must, therefore, have been raised beforehand. Let me clarify that these are highly symbolic texts. Whether this is physical or happens in some other spiritual way, we will see. The fact remains, it is prophesied, and it is a kind of resurrection that occurs before Christ's actual second coming, before the first general resurrection. And where do we find this? we find it in the part of the chiasm where verse 1 and the last verse of Daniel 12 are connected. Now let's look at verse 13. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. This is the resurrection at the end of the days, when Jesus comes and all the righteous will be raised. We already know this date, June 20th, 2025. Daniel will be raised here, along with all the righteous who were found worthy during the investigative judgment of the dead to be present at Jesus' return and to travel with him to heaven. Here too, just to mention it quickly, Mary will be present. She is not in heaven, but rests in the grave until this very day. I mention this because today is Christmas, and Mary was the mother of Jesus. And I often wonder what she will say when she is resurrected on that day, and then realizes what people have made of her. Yes, she was a good woman. Yes, she was even a holy woman, but not holy in the sense that it is taught in Babylon. This verse 13 relates to the first verse, and it says, and at that time shall Michael stand up. This is Jesus who stands up. Remember the heart video by Brother Ray. Jesus will mount the white horse and descend with the armies of heaven, Revelation 19, to fight against evil. He will stand up for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble. The time ahead will be a time of trouble, in whatever way that may manifest, and indeed so terrible as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. Let us prepare for something significant. But again, the trouble may be physical or entirely different, yet it will be terrible. At that time, thy people shall be delivered, the first general resurrection, and specifically everyone that shall be found written in the book. These are the people who were found worthy during the investigative judgment of the dead to be with Jesus in heaven. Here in Daniel 12, we see two resurrections. The special resurrection, if I may call it that, earlier, and then the first general resurrection later, on June 20th, 2025. Now, we would like to know, when might the special resurrection take place? For such resurrection events, there would likely need to be a great earthquake associated with them. And let me say right away, we have two major earthquakes in Revelation. Now, where does this idea come from? The idea simply comes from the fact that at Jesus' crucifixion, when he died, an earthquake occurred. And during this earthquake, the graves opened, and these people were seen in Jerusalem. They were the first fruits of the Lord Jesus, whom he took with him at his ascension into heaven. You can read about this in Matthew 27, around verses 50 to 53. From this, we know that during a resurrection, whether it be the special or the first general resurrection in June 2025, an earthquake will accompany it, of whatever kind it may be. So, we see that the heart sign relates to Daniel 12:12 with a blessing to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is indeed an earthly witness. We now want to see if G3 can help us understand this topic more precisely. Let's move on to the verses about the witnesses in Revelation 11. In this case, verse 4. Here we read, "These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks, as we just reviewed, standing before the God of the earth." Yes, this is still a mystery so far, but we will solve it now. And for that, I have included this slide. This image, for example, comes from the book Brother John wrote, The Mystery of the Holy City, Part 3. Let me draw your attention here to this area in the center of the coordinate system, where it says sun. And we see here that the sun can be found in the small Orion arm. And you already see how vast the distance to the galactic center is, to Sagittarius A, to the heart of the Father. This distance here is approximately 25,000 light years. But now a question. What do we see when we look at the heavens? Do we truly see all the way to the center? No. Science struggles greatly to look there, simply because there's so much dust and material in between. Everything we see lies within a radius of about 3,000 light years. I have another slide for you. For example, this one. Here, the Orion arm is shown slightly larger. Here, we again find the sun. And look, just here is the Orion Nebula. And the Orion Nebula is already 1,350 light years away from us. Very significant nebulae that we all know are located within this very small radius. As I said, just about 3,000 light years away, far from the center of our galaxy. We effectively cannot see there. Yeah, it's even so that the constellations that we see are all located within this radius. I have another image for you. Once again, here's the sun, Rigel, Betelgeuse, the Orion Belt, the Orion Nebula. Look at this. 1,000 light years. Here's the scale. When we look up at the sky, everything we see, all the stars forming the constellations, is no farther than about 3,000 light years away. The point is, when we consider these 4 points of the witnesses in the heavens, where they are located in the Maseroth, they are all before the God of the earth. In other words, before Sagittarius A star, before the Father. And thus, we now know that the God of the earth is God the Father. It also makes sense, and I will briefly return to this image. Here, in the center, is Sagittarius A star, and the entire spiral galaxy revolves around the Father. Even the sun here, with all the constellations and planets, the entire solar system revolves around the Father and is always before the Father. From Earth, we cannot see all the way to the Father. What we see in the firmament is much closer. All of it is before the Father. Now let's look at another verse. Revelation 11:11. You see, we're skipping over some verses because they have already been covered in other videos. The timelines used here are also familiar. Let's jump in here. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. These 3.5 prophetic days have been replaced here with 1,290 literal days from Daniel 12. You will remember there has been no prophetic time since 1844. Now you see, this brings us to January 9, 2024, when the process of standing up began. And in the heavens, we saw that K2 entered Orion and, so to speak, filled it with the breath of life, causing Orion to stand up. At that time, we did not yet know that Orion and the horologium are a reflection of what we have recently been able to recognize in the Mazzaroth, namely, the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands. The text says, "And great fear fell on all those who saw them." Now, regarding the year 2024, I pose this question. Isn't it true that many people have become fearful by now? Possible examples include, we have the war in Ukraine, and with it the threat of nuclear weapons. And we can all see that it's only getting worse instead of moving toward peace. Remember, just recently in Moscow, Russia's top nuclear general was assassinated with a bomb in front of his house, carried out by Ukrainians. This brings danger that had never happened before. Remember, again, just recently in the news, drones from Ukraine striking amid high-rise buildings right in Moscow. That had never happened before either. It's escalating. We have the conflict in Syria. For those who follow us a bit on Telegram, you'll know we've posted some information there. We're waiting for the 4 angels bound at the Euphrates to be released. Yes, that is absolutely visible. Aleppo fell on November 30th. Looking to the heavens, K2 is exactly where Orion's club is. From that point on, things escalated significantly in the Euphrates region. Turkey, America, Russia, Iran, Israel. Earthly angels are certainly being unleashed there. The end result will be that, in some form, 1/3 of people will perish, as described in the 6th trumpet. This situation is heating up. Please stay alert and keep watch. Let's look to America, where the news is currently filled with reports about the bird flu mutating, and not only are birds dying, but now mammals as well. That is very frightening. Ask around in America. Check out the news. They are afraid. Look to Germany. Just a few days ago, there was a fairly intense and terrible terrorist attack at the Christmas market in Magdeburg. Many dead and far more injured. And when you listen to the reports, People are just saying, I'm scared. Now you can't even go to the Christmas market at Christmas anymore. I've written here that great fear has entered in by now. Yes, it has increased. We ourselves have warned about the bowls of wrath, which are now being poured out. Anyone who takes it seriously should have developed some fear. Maybe something else is coming as well. We'll see. But I just want to mention a few things to show that indeed, in the year 2024, since this standing up, fear has entered in. Now, let's read verse 12. It continues, and they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, meaning the witnesses, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And this verse is especially important. The question is, who is calling? And I'll skip ahead a little. And their enemies beheld them. Take a look here. Can you remember? We have the enemies here, exactly where one of the olive trees is. At this point, I'd like to briefly explain something fundamental. In the heavens, we see a play in several acts or scenes on God's canvas or stage. These are the different chapters or themes of Revelation. And depending on the act, the actors play different roles. When Brother Ray looked at the path of the guest actor, G3, in relation to Revelation 19, and verses after the millennium, Sagittarius had to be Jesus on the white horse. And the centaur, the horse of the armies that follow him. In this act, the enemies were the scorpion as the beast, the United Nations. The serpent bearer was the Pope, riding the UN. And the wolf in sheep's clothing was the false prophet, meaning the USA, and thereby fallen Protestantism. You remember the heart video where this was explained. It's a perfect heavenly staging of this act. But now, don't get confused. I'm talking about the act of the two witnesses. This is another scene in Revelation. Look at the context. Where are the two witnesses lying? Let's read Revelation 11:8. Here it says, and their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. The street is the ecliptic. And here you see exactly the place where our Lord was crucified. And in this context, we've always interpreted Sagittarius with the spear as representing the Roman army, specifically the soldier who pierced Jesus. Moreover, Sodom is associated with ancient Rome, or the Roman Empire. Reports about the preferences of various emperors are readily available. And the scorpion represents the Jews who demanded Jesus' death and cried, "Crucify him." Jesus later responded, "Death, where is your sting?" The scorpion is, of course, a major symbol for Egypt, even one of their deities. And didn't the Israel of old constantly long for the flesh pots of Egypt and love their customs? Also, the serpent bearer, Ophiuchus, in this case stands for Satan himself, watching the crucifixion and believing he had won. All the enemies are seen here, and the ascension must take place in the midst of their enemies. This is how Brother John explained it in his last video. I'm sure you remember. Just for completeness, if we look at our time, we find the symbol of Sodom in fallen Protestantism, the USA, which legalized same-sex marriage in 2015, thus ushering in a terrible time. We see this sodomitic behavior in the clergy of the Roman Catholic Church, whose head leads the United Nations of Equality. And the Egyptian Mithraic cult with the fish head hats worn by bishops and cardinals and popes, represented by the serpent bearer Ophiuchus, should speak a clear language. I hope you now understand how the portrayals in Revelation work in the heavens. It's actually quite similar to what we know from an earthly theater performance. So here, we definitely have the area we need to look at to understand these verses. Back to the previous question. Who is calling and saying, "Come up hither"? Here is the current image from December 21. The sun is here at the intersection, exactly at the solstice point, where one olive tree of the witnesses stands, and the sun always gives a loud voice. Then we noticed another striking point in this verse, namely that the witnesses ascend in a cloud. In the sign of the Son of Man, we have two comets. That means two clouds. While in the heart sign, we have one cloud, G3. So we have strong reason to believe that we are in the right place and at the right time. Here we have the enemy's territory, we have a cloud, and we have the loud voice from heaven, and it calls, "Come up hither." And that is what the Lord placed in Brother John's heart on December 21st to verify this, to examine this call. And that is what he did. Do you see how the Lord leads us? What exactly will this ascension be? Could it be a kind of resurrection? A type of rapture? Perhaps the special resurrection? Who will be involved? Will it be literal or symbolic? Could it involve the Church of Philadelphia and the dead pioneers from the beginning of the investigative judgment? It is a possibility, but it doesn't have to be. This ascension could just as well manifest itself in a different way here on Earth. We don't know. But what's important is that we must first find it in the heavens. We'll get to that. There are indications that there could be a special resurrection in a literal sense of the two earthly witnesses. Because at the coronation of Jesus, we find in the text that the 24 elders are seen in heaven. Again, the question is whether it will be literal or in some other form. Could be 12 elders from the Church of Philadelphia. It could be 12 elders from the pioneers at the beginning of the investigative judgment. That is a possibility. But whether it will occur literally, we don't know. And since we don't know, please allow us to address it. But don't be disappointed if it happens differently. It simply has not been fully revealed. However, that some form of special resurrection will occur. That is certain. We will just have to see how it manifests itself on this earth. An ascension could also mean that the message of Philadelphia simply gains momentum, receives an uplift, and thus it takes its rightful place in the last days. Perhaps it simply means that we are heard, that the videos are watched, that the view counts soar, and that the message ultimately lightens the world, as described in Revelation 18:1-3. Our messenger, Brother John, is represented there, and the message from heaven that he brings is meant to ultimately lighten the world. It may well be that this is what we are to expect in the coming days. It should simply be said that we do not know, but we want to mention it so that no one is surprised when it happens. Now let's look at the next verse, Revelation 11:13. And here it says, "And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men," in the Greek it says names of men, 7,000, "and the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven." Brother John explained to us in his recent videos that the moon gives us the timing of the hour. So we have a maximum of 1 lunar month, that is, from Orion to Orion. From the time the moon is in Orion until it is in Orion again, that is the hour. And at this moment, we are currently in the middle of that hour. It began on December 15th, as you can see in this image, when the full moon, which in this case also represents the full bowl of God's wrath, was in Orion's hand on December 15th. And you know that on December 30, the moon will pass by the heart of the Father in the night, and shortly thereafter, it will align with the sun directly at the arrow. Then this bowl of wrath will have been emptied. So here in this verse, we find the first great earthquake mentioned in Revelation. And this great earthquake is therefore connected with this ascension, with this special resurrection, whatever it will be on this earth. But as I said, we first want to see it in the heavens. We'll get to that. To which city is this verse referring? Quite simply, it will become evident when this earthquake occurs. We can speculate whether it is Babylon the Great, the whole world, or some specific city within Babylon. We don't know. We'll see. But we know the time and the time frame in which we must prepare for such an earthquake, whatever form it may take. Could be literal, it could also be an extreme piece of news, a declaration of war, or something else entirely. We will see, but we know we are in the time frame. As for who these 7,000 are, the 7,000 names of men, I have no idea. At the moment, it has not been revealed to us. But that too will surely be discovered shortly. For now, we simply do not know. However, when it is revealed, may it further strengthen our faith. Who are this remnant? They are those who give glory to the God of heaven and become full of reverence, filled with the fear of God. It is highly symbolic. If there were to be a physical, literal, special resurrection, then this remnant would probably be the 144,000. Again, we do not know, but it could be so. This, too, we will discern in the coming days and weeks when it happens. In today's study, we aim to determine when these events, the earthquake, might occur. How can we see in the heavens that 4 heavenly actors are ascending? This is what we want to know. And once we have recognized in the firmament when this time frame is, we can better observe what is happening on earth. What would be the task of this remnant? Regardless of who they are, or who ascends or who stays behind, regardless, what would be the task of this remnant? We find this described in Daniel 12:3. Let's turn to the Bible. It says here in Daniel 12:3, "And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars for ever and ever." This verse is also not so easy to understand. Some see 3 groups of people here, while others see 2 groups. But that's not so important or essential at the moment. What matters is that a group of people is described here, who will lead many others to righteousness. This remnant now have the chance and the task to guide many to Christ, to bring them into his heart. And this is the time of the wheat harvest. The sickle for the wheat harvest has already been formed. As you know, above Orion, K2 already formed the sickle for the wheat harvest. And this is the exceedingly hopeful information, the hopeful aspect that becomes apparent when one looks up to the right place at the right time and can understand and connect the relationships. This remnant that we have spoken of are the so-called 11th hour workers on earth. Their task is to bring many, many people to Jesus during the time when Michael has stood up. And this time will indeed, in some special form, be extremely distressing, more distressing than ever before. And now, dear friends, we come to the core of this message. This core of the message is found this time in the middle of this worship service, like at the chiastic peak. Seek the heart of Jesus. Even if everything seems to point to this special resurrection or to some kind of ascension of the witnesses, the earthly witnesses, in whatever form, whether it is like this or not, it doesn't matter. Even after this earthquake and the subsequent events, not everything is too late or over. God's grace is still available for a short time afterward. And even if the earthly Philadelphia were to be taken away, and with them, perhaps the pioneers from the beginning of the time of the investigative judgment, what comes next would be the much discussed so-called second chance. Many Christians speak of this, which provides an opportunity for the remnant, respectively the 144,000, to lead many more people to Christ, to bring them to righteousness. This event, however it unfolds on earth, will certainly, in one form or another, be an awakening event for many. A clear sign in one form or another. And because it will be such a clear sign, we have made an effort to complete this video and this message in time. This message, as you have seen, comes from here, the heart of the Father. And the heart of the Father is, in turn, embedded within this beautiful heart sign of the Lord Jesus. This is not at all about the individuals who may or will partake in a possible literal special resurrection. That's not the point. Rather, it's about the hope that there is still a rich harvest to be gathered for the Lord. May no one lose hope in the coming time, because until June 4, 2025, Grace is still available. Many people can still be saved in one way or another. But do not be deceived. There are no additional 7 years to come. Instead, the time is short. There is only about half a year left to bring in this harvest. It is possible that our videos, especially the last series by Brother John, have been underestimated or disregarded. Perhaps people will take notice of them on a large scale, and that is the ascension of the earthly witnesses and their message to heaven. But these videos represent a map, a plan, and a timeline. The remnant who give glory to God after this earthquake should hold to this and boldly move forward according to this timeline. It is very likely that Satan will stage a counterfeit return of Christ. This has also been prophesied. Perhaps with holograms in the sky. Do not be deceived. For you have God's clocks and know exactly when the first resurrection will take place, namely on the 20th of June, 2025. That is the core of what may be the final message from our mouths. Do not give up, but make the most of and redeem the time between this special resurrection, in whatever form it may occur, and the close of grace on June 4th, and even the first resurrection on June 20th, 2025. It is the last chance, but full of hope and love from the Lord to bring in a rich harvest. Watch our videos and do not be deceived. The Lord has, out of his immeasurably loving heart, prepared everything for this final short time on earth. Now, let's look to the heavens at the point of the winter solstice during this lunar hour and try to determine if we can see the fulfillment of the ascension of the witnesses. Let us go live to Stellarium. And here we are on December 17, 2024, for example. Let's advance day by day. Pay attention to the sun. It is here. And here, this marker on the ecliptic is the winter solstice point. And you see that on December 21, the sun is exactly there. And that is also the point and date on which Brother John received this message, prompting him to reflect again on the ascension of the witnesses. Now, let's proceed step by step. We're getting closer to the point where the full moon of December 15 approaches the Earth, or this region, and is poured out. To the right, you can see the moon approaching. We're now at December 29, and I'm advancing hourly because the moon moves very quickly. And you can see that here it aligns very closely with the heart of the Father around midnight or 1 a.m. between December 29 and 30. This alignment near Sagittarius A star could potentially be the moment for a significant earthquake. The conjunction of the moon and the sun occurs a few hours later. It happens between December 30 and December 31. We know that the full moon bowl is poured out here. It's worth noting that just a few hours earlier, the moon is directly at the arrow where it could be activated. Brother Ray explained this in the heart video. Take note of this area well. Here you see comet C 2024 G3 moving toward Sagittarius A star, toward the heart of the Father. It will reach this point on the evening of January 2 into the morning of January 3. You see that? This marks another significant date, either for such an earthquake or for the event of this special ascension rapture. But as mentioned, these are preliminary thoughts, as more detailed insights may follow. It is also noteworthy that a new month is about to begin. From a biblical perspective, the new moon has always been a particularly interesting and significant event. In Paraguay, it might be possible to sight the first visible crescent moon on the evening of December 31, 2024, if conditions allow. You can see here this green area indicating that the first new moon crescent might be visible, and we are located here near the arrow. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, the new moon will not yet be visible on the evening of December 31. This knowledge makes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day particularly interesting. I'll say it again. If we are unable to sight the new moon in Paraguay on New Year's Eve, it will nevertheless be visible here and in Israel on the evening of January 1, 2025. The earthquake, in whatever form it may occur, could happen when the moon is poured out or on New Year's Eve. These are possibilities. Perhaps there might even be a special announcement on New Year's Day. We will see. But stay alert. These are just a few initial thoughts on this topic. But now a question arises. Shouldn't we see 4 actors in the sky that are somehow being called upward? We have 2 olive trees and 2 candlesticks or lampstands. The ascension implies that it must be a moving sign. Who is at the right place, at the heart of the Father, at the right time, during the current lunar hour? Only by knowing the true witnesses in heaven, in the Mazzaroth, can this text about the ascension be accurately identified in the heavens. Let's first look at this table and this image. In the image, we have January 1, 2025, and it's striking that there are indeed 4 actors visible here. We have the moon, the sun, comet G3, and Mercury. Looking at this table, which Brother John kindly provided, let's begin with the sun and see if we can assign it as an actor. We know the sun typically represents the bridegroom, the Lord Jesus. We previously saw that it was at this point during the solstice on December 21. Here, the cross could also be seen. So we must classify the sun as an olive tree. A second actor is very easy to identify, Mercury. Mercury represents the messenger. Mercury stands for the messenger, and you know that Brother John is this messenger. And you also know that Brother John is associated with the Church of Philadelphia. He is our leader. So it's clear that Mercury must be a lampstand. And because we know this, it is relatively straightforward to classify G3, which is heading toward the heart of the Father, as another olive tree in this instance. And the moon, in this case, would represent another lampstand, corresponding to the reclining fish. You can also see the color associations. The sun and the moon belong together, as I mentioned earlier, because the reclining fish, the dead pioneers from the beginning of the investigative judgment, is nourished by the cross. Meanwhile, the living church of Philadelphia is nourished by Orion, by the Orion message. In this way, we see 4 actors at the right time and in the right place. And these 4 cross the galactic equator, or the winter solstice point, on specific dates. The sun does this on December 21. The moon does it between December 29 and 30, 2024. G3 does it on January 2 into January 3, 2025. And Mercury does it on January 8th. We now have a time frame for the ascension of the 4 components of the 2 witnesses. Let's observe this live in Stellarium. I'm here on December 19. Let's first look at the sun. Here is December 20, and this symbol marks the solstice point. Please don't forget, at this point, The actors are standing on the galactic equator before the Lord of the earth. And you can see here on December 21, the sun is precisely at that point. Now let's check when the next actor passes by. That would be the moon here. We're going too fast, so let's go back a bit. You can see it here between December 29 and December 30. The moon approaches the heart of the Father and crosses the galactic equator. Who comes next? Here's Mercury, and here's G3. You can see how G3 approaches the heart of the Father, where the galactic equator also lies. We are now in the night of January 2 to January 3, 2025. Lastly, we have Mercury remaining. And as you know from the previous table, it reaches the solstice point on January 8. Now we have seen how the ascension can be observed in the heavens. And with this, we have established a time frame within which we can observe if and in what form the possible ascension of the earthly witnesses could take place after a significant earthquake, either literally or in another form. One last and very significant approach to identifying the likely timing of the great earthquake and the possible special ascension still needs to be addressed. We now understand the importance of the two equinoxes and the two solstices, and where they are located on the Mazzaroth. We also know that the Mazzaroth is the clock of God the Father. Let me remind you that most Christians insist that the Father alone knows the time, and therefore it is He who reveals it on His clock. What are the two hands of His clock? The sun, the great light for the day, and the moon, the lesser light for the hour. In this context, the Father, the Lord of the earth, before whom the witnesses of Revelation 11 stand, proclaim the day on December 21, 2024, when the sun was at the winter solstice point. And He called, "Come up hither." Remember, this is one of the points where an olive tree stands. I've adjusted the table slightly for this interpretation. Here you can once again see the sun we just discussed. It represents the day and was at the solstice point on December 21, 2024. That's also where the point for the olive tree is located. Now, let's look at this table to find where the moon should proclaim the hour. At the corresponding spring equinox point by the reclining fish. Let's check Stellarium Live to see when that is. We are currently on December 19. Let's click 2 days quickly forward. Here we are on December 21, when the sun is at the winter solstice point. But what interests us now is the moon. let's see when it moves into this region. Here's the moon. Now we follow it day by day until it reaches the spring equinox by the reclining fish. Here is the spring equinox. Now let's move forward hour by hour. And look at this. It's January 5, 2025 at around 11 p.m. In my case, I've set Jerusalem as the location in Stellarium. If you have a different location set, there may be slight variations. Could this be the hour of the earthquake? We'll see. If that's the case, when could the special resurrection of the earthly witnesses take place? From the interpretation mentioned earlier, we've seen that Mercury reaches the solstice point during the night of January 7 to 8. This is, in that interpretation, the last moment when we could expect an ascension. Let's now verify our current interpretation. For this, we should again consider the hint that the witnesses of Revelation 11 lie where their Lord was crucified. We know for certain that this was in the year AD 31. Let's quickly check where the spring equinox point was located on the Mazzaroth in that year. For this, let's go back here to the year 31, to May, specifically the 25th of May. And here we see that the spring equinox point in the year 31 was not at the reclining fish, but directly on the line of the upright fish. Now, let's take this observation and apply it to the year 2025 to find when the hour hand, the moon, is located there. We return to January 2025 and search for the moon again. Here's the moon. Now let's move forward hour by hour. And look at this. January 7, 2025 at around 9 p.m. This is astonishing and highly intriguing, I must say. But we need at least 2 more confirmations for this approach. Where would the enemies be here? And where is the cloud in which the witnesses ascend? I believe you can already see the enemies. In this case, it's naturally the evil whale, Cetus, the sea monster we've mentioned in so many videos before. So the sun stood among Sagittarius, Scorpius, and Ophiuchus, as previously noted. And the moon is with the enemy, the evil whale. That sounds very compelling, wouldn't you say? For those who followed us for a while, you know that in 2022, At this very location on the Mazzaroth, we discovered a special cross in heaven. At that time, we could already decipher the cloud. Here's a quick summary of what we've learned so far about the moon. Here's May 25 in the year 31, where we identified the equinox during the year of Jesus' crucifixion. Then we apply this to our current year, and that brings us to January 7, 2025, when the moon is in the same location. Now, this is the image I wanted to show you. Look at this image from the article, Behold the Power of God. Do you see where the upright fish points? It is relevant in this case. Directly to the Andromeda galaxy. That's, of course, a massive cloud. And this galaxy, like all others, has a black hole at its center, once again pointing to the Father. Many scholars suggest that a black hole can be seen as the seventh dimension, so that all black holes would be connected through that dimension. Let me also mention that at the time of this heavenly discovery in 2022, we bought or were allowed to find a golden ticket for this upcoming journey to heaven. This fact now gains significant weight in this interpretation, because you usually buy a travel ticket sometime before the trip, not necessarily at the last moment, right? I won't delve into this today, but I'll link a few relevant publications. Rating, highly recommended. Please read them. It's worth noting that the day between January 5 and 7 holds meaning for many Christians. On January 6, they remember the three wise men from the East who visited baby Jesus. For them, it is the day when God manifests himself to the Gentiles, who at that time were asleep and did not expect Jesus. It's known as the day of Epiphany. Let's see how God may manifest in our time. Following this logic, let's now examine what the sun and moon indicate in June 2025 regarding the first general resurrection. We should again find the day and hour on the Father's clock. We already know the day indicated by the sun. That's when the sun stands at the second solstice point near Orion's hand, where the ecliptic and galactic equator intersect. Remember, the club also represents the fig tree and the other olive tree. Now let's observe that live in Stellarium. I'm moving to June and to Orion. Here is the summer solstice point, and in my case, the sun will be at this point at around 5 a.m. during the night of June 20 to 21, 2025. This marks the day of the first general resurrection, when all the righteous dead will be raised. Let's quickly check whether the moon is also in a significant position on the Mazzaroth during this resurrection, just as it was at the upright fish on January 7 for the special resurrection. Look at the displayed image. On the night of the first general resurrection, the moon is, in my case at midnight, also positioned directly at the upright fish. This means the moon activates this fish during both resurrections, pointing upward toward the Andromeda cloud. That simply cannot be a coincidence. But now our focus is when the moon reaches the equinox point near Virgo, the candlestick associated with Orion. Logic dictates that we should hear the moon's announcement of the hour before June 20th or 21st, 2025. After all, Jesus comes to take his bride before the winepress of his wrath is trodden in the day of his wrath. Now let's go to Virgo. Here is the equinox point. Now let's click back day by day until we find the moon. Here's the moon. And now we carefully move back hour by hour. Now the moon has reached the equinox near Virgo, and the date is the highly significant and well-known June 4, 2025 at around 3 p.m. That even coincides with the time of the evening sacrifice. That can't be a coincidence. The moon thus announces the hour of Jesus' return, which begins when the investigative judgment in heaven ends. Grace ceases. The Euphrates in heaven, the Mu, dries up, and Jesus leaves the temple as king. This announcement fittingly occurs during the time of the seventh and final bowl of wrath. In summary, this highly impressive interpretation and fulfillment scenario indicates that for the possible special resurrection, the day, December 21st, 2024, with the call to ascend, is announced first, followed by the hour, January 7, 2025, marking the possible special ascension in some form, revealed by the Father on his clock. While for the first general resurrection, the hour is announced first by the moon on the Father's clock, June 4, 2025, followed by the already known day of June 20 to 21, 2025. Here, all the unrighteous will declare that the day of God's wrath has come, namely June 22, 2025, as we know from other videos. we can now state with even greater certainty that when all four components of the heavenly witnesses have been reached or activated, the four winds will be released. We also know this date from other videos. Following the first general resurrection, the resurrected dead will be taken to heaven with the living righteous. Then, on June 22, 2025, all 7 last plagues will be poured out on one single day, the day of God's wrath. Here, once again, is the table for completeness, showing where the sun marks the day for the first general resurrection, June 21, 2025, near Orion, and the moon marks the hour on June 4, 2025, when it reaches the equinox point near Virgo. One thing is certain. Ahead of us lie a few exciting days of observation and waiting. One verse that occupies our thoughts is found in Isaiah 26:20, which states, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast." Given our knowledge of the heart with its chambers, drawn by G3 and explained by Brother Ray in a previous video, this verse in Isaiah 26:20 gains special relevance. The first bowl of wrath is expected to be poured out on December 29 to December 30, 2024. Then this lunar bowl will be emptied. It is highly likely that this verse refers to this time and this event. Keep in mind, it was promised to the Church of Philadelphia that God would keep them from the hour that is to come upon the entire world. Remember, we are still within this lunar hour. Does Philadelphia enter into this chamber? How will this manifest on earth? Could it be that entering the chamber means a physical ascension to heaven? Or does Philadelphia remain here on earth? We don't know. One thing is certain. God has many ways in which he can preserve his people. However, we have this heart sign and also the heart chambers. That is why this verse in Isaiah 26:20 becomes so interesting and significant for this time, as it speaks of entering into the chambers. Keep this verse in mind. Let's quickly take a look at the second great earthquake mentioned in Revelation, which is associated with the first general resurrection that will occur on June 20th, 2025. For this, we turn to Revelation 16:18. This event happens during the time frame of the 7th bowl of wrath. It says here, "And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake, and so great." This earthquake is therefore connected to the first general resurrection on June 20th. Let's look at the next verse. And it says, "And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath." You will remember from Brother Ray's video where he spoke about the heart and the heart-shaped symbol. When Babylon comes into God's remembrance, it means, in Jewish thinking, that it reaches his heart. And you surely know that in Jesus' heart, even Babylon has its place. The Lord himself calls his children out of Babylon. Recall Revelation 18:4-5. "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." This is also where the cup of wine is mentioned, which is poured out in one day. These are the 7 last plagues occurring on June 22, 2025. In this image, you can see the horologium. This is also the location of the wine press, where the grapes are thrown to be later trodden upon. G3 passes directly through the wine press. For us today, this should at least serve as a warning that this moment will come. There is still hope. There's still grace. And the heart of Jesus is still open to come to him. Leave Babylon and turn to Jesus, so that you don't have to endure Babylon's plagues. Remember the Bible verse, John 12:32, that says, "And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me." That was his cross. And remember where the cross is located on the Maseroth, precisely in the place we are considering today in this video. He wants to draw everyone to himself. That's why this message is so particularly important today for all the remnant who will turn many to righteousness in the coming time. Come to him. Make use of this short time. The next verse, Revelation 16:20, is also highly relevant to us. Let's read it. "And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found." This most likely refers to the departure to heaven with Jesus and all the saints who will be taken up during the first general resurrection. It explicitly states here that mountains and islands will no longer be found. You'll remember that Brother John used these 2 symbols to represent our place here in Paraguay. Here in Paraguay, we live in the Cordilleras, and Cordillera means mountain range. Meanwhile, Brother John has been residing on the island of Nevis for some time. Thus, these 2 symbols represent the message originating here in Paraguay and now from Nevis. If these are no longer found, it signifies that Jesus has taken his entire bride, including all the redeemed of all ages, to himself. It will then be a time when many will search for the word of God, but will no longer find it. The phrase islands and mountains is used once more in Revelation, specifically in Revelation 6:14, within the text of the sixth seal. Let's turn there briefly, beginning with Revelation 6:13. I want to start with verse 13 because you should already know when this verse was fulfilled. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. I have two images here that will help us pinpoint this moment. Here you see October 16, 2024. Remember, we had the club here because during the timeline of the sixth seal, the Orionids also appeared. We can interpret this text chronologically to signify that this wood also describes a fig tree. In the second image, you can see how this fig tree is shaken. We also saw this explained in Brother John's video. This gives us a time frame. The Orionids crossed the area of Orion's club, the area of the wood, from October 14 to October 22, 2024. This is not only the fig tree mentioned in this verse, but also one of the olive trees. It's worth reiterating that. At this point, allow me a word on the early or untimely figs that the wind shakes from the tree. The fig tree is also a synonym for Israel, and the wind generally represents war, conflict, unrest. The peak of the Orionid meteor shower was around October 21, 2024. Looking at the world stage, we see an escalation of violence between Israel and Hezbollah in these days. And around October 20th, Israel conducted significant airstrikes on many targets in Beirut and other regions. Hezbollah countered with hundreds of rockets aimed at Israeli targets, leading to a significant escalation of tensions. Wikipedia is full of information about Israel's ground offensive in southern Lebanon. Would you agree that these are the untimely airstrikes, given that we all know what the news reported on that important December 15th? It was the huge earthquake bomb during Israel's attack on Syria on December 15. This event can very well be seen as a transition to the beginning of full escalation in this region. So please, don't think that December 15 passed unnoticed. This news was all over the media and went worldwide. As mentioned, some war angels have definitely been unleashed in the Euphrates region. I hope this additional information provides a more complete picture of this verse about the shaking of the fig tree and a very plausible earthly event. With our current understanding, we can now interpret the next verses much more clearly. Let's move to Revelation 6:14. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. We have two parts to consider here. The first is, the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. If we consistently line up the text of the sixth seal with our current understanding, this rolling up would have to occur in the coming days. Because the second part says, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. This sounds different from the previous verse. There, mountains and islands were not found anymore, which is after June 21, 2025. While here, they are moved out of their places. And that requires an immense force. Otherwise, mountains and islands can't be moved. Thus, this part might refer to the great earthquake of the special resurrection. Logically, the first part, the rolling up of heaven, would have to occur just before that. Let's take a look. I've prepared an image here. You know that in the sign of the Son of Man, K2 rolls up on this side. We've already explained this in many videos. And E3 rolls up on the other side. Now the question is just, when does this rolling begin? And with our current understanding, that's easy to determine. We simply look at when K2 leaves Orion. That happened on December 23. That's this right orange point here. So in my case, that was yesterday. Let's look at E3. Then E3 leaves the horologium on December 27. So just a few days from my current date. Now, if this happens in the next few days, then we know that the great earthquake could occur after December 27. And at this point, mountains and islands are moved out of their places. We'll see exactly when this will happen when it occurs. But the important thing is to understand that the sequence of events in the verses of the sixth seal could fit perfectly with our current knowledge. For completeness, we can also look at the remaining verses. They remain unchanged. Verses 15, 16, and 17 describe the moment when all people will hide in the mountains and caves, seeking to hide themselves. And they say, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come." This great day is June 22, 2025, when all the 7 last plagues will be poured out. From the great earthquake, from the special ascension, whatever form it may take, it will become increasingly clear that Jesus is on his way. He will mount his horse, Revelation 19, and come to the earth with the armies of heaven to fight against the enemies, however that may physically occur. People will begin to notice that the paradigm is shifting. Ultimately, they will conclude that it's too late, and they will hide from this great day. Don't forget that one day Jesus will physically be visible in the sky. At the latest, these final verses will also literally be fulfilled then. People will certainly be filled with great fear. Therefore, once again, this is still a time of grace. No matter what happens during the earthquake and the special resurrection, in whatever form it takes, it is not too late. Make use of this brief half year and come to your Savior. This is the last, the second chance. And during this time, in this short period, the wheat harvest will take place. Don't forget this. It's during this time that it will be decided who belongs to the goats and who belongs to the sheep. It's here that it will be determined who belongs to the wheat and who to the grapes. It is a time of separation. God says, separate yourself from Babylon and come to me. This is the point. This is the hopeful message that turning to Jesus is still possible for a short time. Take his hand. I have now reached my last slide. And this image is intended to provide an overview of the coming time. Here you have Orion, and you know that the summer solstice is here. This is the point where the first general resurrection will take place on June 20th, 2025. If the first general resurrection is to take place near one olive tree, doesn't it make sense that we should expect the special resurrection, whatever form it takes, near the other olive tree in our days? I believe it would make a lot of sense if it were so. Don't forget, this message to come up hither was given to Brother John precisely on December 21 at the winter solstice. We have now received a time frame within the current moon hour in which we can observe whether and how the verses will unfold on earth. This image also shows the half year between these 2 points, during which the heart of Jesus is still open to you. On June 4th, 2025, the books in heaven will be closed. Then the Euphrates, the Mu, will be dried up. Then Jesus will also cast the censer to the earth. Then the wheat harvest will have come to an end. And the reaper, Orion, will focus on the grape harvest. Today, we have seen the ascension of the 4 witnesses in the heavens. This gives us great confidence that we are in the right place and, above all, at the right time. The time has come for these verses to be fulfilled. Please, make use of this time. Jesus' heart is still open. And thus, the title, Seek the Heart of Jesus. Amen.